Welcome back, everybody. It is time for another thrilling edition of Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast covering the Las Vegas Raiders. Also, a big shout out to our friends at BetUS. They sponsor our video, so if you're watching us, you can thank them. And don't forget, also, you can get that great deal. Listen, it's Super Bowl Sunday. You got to put some action on this game, right? Right. Get 150% sign-up bonus by using the promo code YouTube150. That's up to $2,000 when you make a deposit, thanks to our friends at BetUS. YouTube150 is it. So get there, start playing today, and enjoy some action on that Super Bowl Sunday coming up. It is Super Bowl weekend. I am Scott Branson, your host, along with my co-host, Mr. Mo Moten. Mo is a senior NFL writer over at Bleacher Report. He's about to have a marathon weekend with the Super Bowl and all his writing duties over there, not to mention the fact that he also writes about the Raiders for sportsnot.com, where you can also find my work, both written and in video format, so we appreciate that. Follow Mo on x.com at MoMoten, M-O-E-M-O-T-O-N. I am at LV Gully, the show, SNB Today. All right, Mo, the Raiders, breakneck speed. They're not wasting any time. Pete Carroll filling his staff. And of course, the big domino that fell towards the end of last week and beginning of this week before we sit down here on this Thursday morning to do our show is they go out and they get Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly, of course, former Oregon head coach, UCLA head coach, former San Francisco 49ers and Philadelphia Eagles head coach in the NFL. And of course, this year, the offensive coordinator of the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, never mind who they beat. And Mo, this is something you brought up on the last show. I was much more doubtful that it would happen than you were. You had much more, I think, foresight and thought that there could be a possibility that it happens. It has happened. It happened. Chip Kelly is getting a great payday. $6 million is what was reported. But more than that, in the press conference we saw him yesterday in Las Vegas, he talked about why he came to the Raiders, that the plan that Pete Carroll, the plan that Mark Davis, that John Spytek had, he was all in on that. Give me your initial comments. I know you've been talking to your audience over on Bleacher Report on your live shows, by the way, Monday through Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can catch Mo there. But Mo, tell me kind of the reaction. How are you feeling about this? And what does this mean for Pete Carroll going into this season?
I'm ecstatic. If you remember the show last week, I was, as you said, all over it. Can you see me, Scott?
Yep.
Okay. I was ecstatic. I mean, all over it on last week's show. Felt like Chip Kelly had a chance to be the OC. Reason being was because Chip Kelly was mentioned as an OC candidate last offseason. But the Athletic came out with a report saying that Antonio Pierce didn't want too many of Chip Kelly's staffers coming with him to Las Vegas. So it didn't work out after Cliff Kingsbury went to Washington. So there was a chance for Chip Kelly last offseason. He gets it this offseason with Pete Carroll's staff. It's a home run hire. You get a guy who's coming in with, you mentioned, head coaching experience, but a person who has developed, evolved over time. So a lot of people, well, not a lot, some people were worried about the Chip Kelly hire because they say, well, his tempo offense, it didn't work in the NFL the first time around. Why would it work this time around? Well, he went back to college after San Francisco went 2-14. UCLA. Run game has been very important. Has been a staple in his offenses. You saw it at Ohio State this past season. This is not the same Chip Kelly who just runs a bunch of plays and hopes something works. This is now Chip Kelly who comes in with a plan, gets more methodical with his run game, as I said, uses clock to sustain drives, doesn't tire out his offense, doesn't tire out his defense when his offense isn't sustaining drives. So this is a Chip Kelly who has changed since his last stint in the NFL, and that's why I'm excited for the hire. Also, we talked about this. Not a lot of OCs, quality OCs in the NFL, were interested in this job because of the quarterback room. As I just mentioned, Chip Kelly was interested in the job last year with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew being the top two quarterbacks. Now the Raiders get him, and the Raiders are able to possibly develop a young quarterback. Will Howard out of Ohio State could be a day 2 pick. They probably will get a veteran. There are some whispers out there that the Raiders may be interested and Marcus Mariota. He has a rapport with Chip Kelly back from their Oregon days. I don't expect him to be the top option, but it
No.
seems like the Raiders are going to look at a multitude of quarterbacks, veteran and rookie, this offseason.
Yeah, and I have a piece coming up on Sportsnaut about the Chip Kelly, Will Howard thing, because I think there's definitely there's smoke there and there could be
Yep.
fire there if he's around and the Raiders can pick him on day two. But I look at the situation. I'm really struck by some of the not yeah, I would say negative reaction or the muted reaction to some out there in Raider Nation about the Chip Kelly hire. I don't understand. I mean, looking at what this franchise has done, looking at the franchise's coaching staffs over the year, this is perhaps one of the best hires they've made as far as an offensive defensive coordinator is concerned in decades. I really believe that. And Chip Kelly, people get all caught up in him as a head coach. This is different. This is why he went to Ohio State, right? He went to Ohio State. He wanted to find his joy in playing football, focus on offense. He did, obviously working for Ryan Day there. They win a national championship. When he was a head coach, and you just throw out the year in San Francisco, did he do everything right there? No, he had his fault too. But that was a disaster of a situation he walked in with Trent Baalke, who was fired after that 1 year that Chip Kelly was there. And so they ushered everybody out at the same time. It was a house cleaning, as the Raider fans know all too well. But you look at this and you start to think about, Mo, and this is what popped into my mind when I saw Chip Kelly, and that is whatever the Raiders' plan is at quarterback, and whether it's to go hard at somebody this year that's a young quarterback, or it's to do what we're talking about, take a good quarterback on day two, see if you can develop them and bring in a veteran, they must have, and I believe, they sold Chip Kelly on the plan at quarterback. And I'm sure Tom Brady had a lot to do with this. They sold him on the plan at quarterback because as an offensive coordinator in the NFL, and to your point, nobody was interested in this job because of that quarterback room, at least one of the reasons. So you had to get him on board and tell him he wasn't desperate. He just won a national championship. And he was making $2.5 million a year at Ohio State. So to me, that tells me behind the scenes the stuff we don't know yet. And it's very encouraging because it tells me the plan and how they're selling it to coaches and eventually players too, by the way, is something that people see, understand, and believe in.
Well, the Raiders are going to have options. And I talked about some of those options on my Bleacher Report live show. I'll talk about them with our calls today. But Geno Smith needs a new contract. What happens in Seattle with him? Geno Smith has a connection with Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll said that Geno Smith was one of his all-time favorite players. And think about how many players Pete Carroll has been acquainted with in his years coaching. I talked about Marcus Mariota. The Patriots are thinking about trading Joe Milton, apparently. A lot of Raider fans love Joe Milton. I would pump the brakes on Joe Milton. It was one game against the Bills' backups. But Sam Darnold is going to hit the market. I read The Athletic, and they said Sam Darnold would be interested in learning from Tom Brady. So the Raiders still had that Tom Brady draw with these quarterbacks who are still playing. And then, as I said, you look at the draft, even if Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward aren't available at 6, you got Jackson Dart, who Chip Kelly recruited before he went to USC. So there's a connection there. We talked about Will Howard. Obviously, a lot of fans are out on Jalen Milroe, but who knows? Chip Kelly runs a lot of RPO in his offense. Jalen Milroe possibly could be an option. Justin Fields is a guy that's polarizing. I still feel like Justin Fields could be a quality quarterback in this league. A lot of people say, well, he's inaccurate, can't complete a pass. I said this, I'll say this, and I said this on my Bleacher Report Live. I'll say it again, Scott. He struggled with accuracy in Chicago. I know this. But in Pittsburgh, in a smaller sample size, he started 6 games. His completion rate was 65.8. Was a noticeable improvement from his Chicago years. He had Arthur Smith, who was a quality offensive coordinator. Now you put him with Chip Kelly and you run him with some RPO design plays, you may get the best out of Justin Fields as well. So I wouldn't rule out a Justin Fields / rookie quarterback pairing. And I made this tweet really quick, Scott, yesterday, I believe. What was it? Wednesday. That I think Aiden O'Connell's days as a potential starter are over. Because I truly believe the Raiders are going to bring in a veteran and draft the quarterback, and those two players will compete for the starting job.
Yeah, yeah, and I think too. I've had some people. By the way, I want to say this too. that we now have, for those of you, I know Mo and I interact with a lot of you on X especially, we now have an X.com community, right? So there's communities on X. So go sign up for the Silver and Black Today community there. You can check it out. Mo and I are in there and we're talking. As you can see, I've had some posts in there. I've already had some great conversations with people. But go check there and join. You have to join. You have to answer a couple questions, and then as the admin, I can let you in. But that is what we're doing up on X. So make sure you do that. You could still just tweet at us in the regular community, but go ahead, check that out and join us there. But Mo, I think that you look at Oops, sorry. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm showing you Bet US. I wanted to bet my Super Bowl bet. But I've had people come at me, well, now Aiden O'Connell will finally get the shot he deserves because now he's got a real Just stop, okay? Aiden O'Connell, he's a good kid. He's a good quarterback. He's a spot starter backup in this league. And if the Raiders decide to keep a hold of him, I hope they do. And I think he will be there at the beginning. Hopefully, we'll see. Maybe he won't be. Maybe this regime comes in and says, you know what? Doesn't fit our mold. Appreciate it. Good luck to you. And they completely clean the room out, which would be fine too. But the desire, because you like somebody doesn't mean that everybody else who observes the league is wrong, except for a handful of people who think that he's the next Tom Brady. Nah, it's not going to happen. So the opportunity, though, with somebody who knows quarterbacks with Chip Kelly, remember now, you have at the top of this list, Patrick Graham comes back on defense, another big one we talked about. We thought it was going to happen last week, and it sure did. So that's a great thing for continuity for this team and for this locker room. But you look at Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll, two former Pac-12, the old Pac-12 coaches that were at the top of college football, right? These are guys who are not losers. These are not guys who are retreads because they've failed so miserably and now they're looking for another opportunity, right? These guys have had success, okay? This is the kind of point we made too, and I don't want to kick a dead horse here. This is what the point we made with the Antonio Pierce hiring, and why part of the reason I believe he failed was he didn't have the ability, as we know now. Chip Kelly, remember everybody said, well, the reason he hired Luke Getsy last year, Mo, was because they wouldn't pay Cliff Kingsbury. Well, they also had a chance to get Chip Kelly, and Antonio Pierce didn't want his coaches to come with him, which is what you mentioned at the top of the show. So I think this is something. Look, I understand Raider Nation, Mo, has been burned so many times. So I go back to the word we keep using, cautiously optimistic. But you should be, for the first time, looking at these people. They got to do it on the field, but with Tom Brady there, Chip Kelly, Patrick Graham, Pete Carroll, and all the other coaches that you're seeing come in, experienced position coaches that are very highly sought after, come from great programs, including Notre Dame and others. This feels so much different to me, and I've been covering the team for 8 years, just completely different.
Right. Raiders also picked up Notre Dame's running back coach. Will Beatty's going to be the wide receivers coach. They're filling out the position coaches as well. But you mentioned it. You look at the lineup of coaches right now. You look at Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham being back and having to report players. I said this 2 days ago. This is a coaching staff that I can get behind.
Right.
I can look at this coaching staff and say it's one of the best coaching staffs the Raiders have had in quite some time. I remember people were saying that about last year's coaching staff, and I'm like, hold up, you mean to tell me Antonio Pierce, who mostly inexperienced, and you got offensive coordinator Luke Getz, who has a lot to prove, this is the best coaching staff? Because people were saying this last year, yeah. And I don't think it was. I think it was a lot of hope involved. And this time around, it's actually one of the better coach staff you've seen in quite some time. As you said, Pete Carroll, we went through his resume over and over again. Again, one of 3 coaches with a college natty and a Super Bowl title, been to 2 Super Bowls, has built programs. Chip Kelly, been in the NFL. A lot of people want to talk about his San Francisco year going 2-14. How about the fact that he took the Eagles 10-6 his first 2 years? It's like people like to focus only on the negative, and they forget about, he went back-to-back years 10-6 also. Then went back to UCLA, was a head coach there. Players praised him. Helped Ohio State win a natty. His offense was 12th in scoring this past season. Again, he has evolved as a coach. You bring Patrick Graham back, as I said, has a rapport with players on that side of the ball. So you get some continuity there in development. So you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, Raiders have some continuity. They have some innovative play calling on the offensive side. You got Pete Carroll running the ship. My only question about this coaching staff, my only concern, and I talked about this on Wednesday or Tuesday, Brennan Carroll. I know that's Pete Carroll's son. I know he was at University of Washington. He was the offensive line coach and offensive coordinator. He was also at Arizona. But to me, the offensive line coach is the most important position coach on staff. That group is responsible for opening up lanes for your run game and protecting your quarterback. A lot of times when teams fails because their offensive line isn't up to par. Now, Brendan Carroll, you're looking at his resume. I know it was 1 year in Washington, but Washington was 104th in scoring. You look at he was a run game coordinator and assistant offensive line coach for some bad Seattle Seahawks offensive lines. Those offensive lines mostly run by Tom Cable, by the way. He was a run game coordinator in 2020, and the Seahawks were 12th in rushing. So there is a positive there for Brendan Carroll. But he's the big question mark for me because with these accomplished coaches, Brendan Carroll has got in that prove it stage where he has to prove that he can handle a very important job on that Raiders staff.
Yeah, it's huge, especially since there might be some changes there, specifically an injection of talent and maybe some position changes. So we'll see what happens there. All right, we're going to close out this first segment. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about, okay, so now you started to see this coaching staff pretty much put together. What does that mean for the Raiders when it looks, they look to roster construction? Not only the draft, but free agency, and then the players on the roster. How might things change for some of them based on what we know with Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, and so on? Defense, obviously, familiar there. But when we talk about the offensive side, what's going to change there? We're going to talk about that when we come back and talk to you here on Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Also, our video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. Don't go anywhere. All right, we've been telling you all season long about our great sponsors here at Silver and Black Today. Of course, that is BetUS. They're sponsoring our video here. Mo and I love being involved with these guys. They've been great. Also, just a great site if you want to go bet your football, right? Or whatever you want to do. But Mo, I figured what we would do today is in this spot, show everybody a little bit about the Super Bowl. I want to get some of your Super Bowl picks here, just a couple. I know you're going to have a big piece on it and some other things going out. But we're going to go into BetUS and talk a little bit about this because there's nothing, in my view, and you tell me if you feel different, betting the Super Bowl is just a whole different game. It's so much fun because there's so much to choose from.
So much to choose from, and of course, BetUS also has the prop tool. So if you're not into betting over unders or sides as far as the spread, you can go into the props, and there are a ton of props. I remember Scott years ago, we had our guy Jeff Parles on, and he was going through a ton of props for the Super Bowl. You can get crazy with it. Will there be an octopus or not? I'm sure that's in some of these books. But it's definitely a fun time where you can make a lot of money. I know a lot of people put a lot of scratch on their Super Bowl picks, so we're going to help some people out today.
Yeah, and I'm in there right now, Mo, and if you look at some of these things, right, you have obviously the game, that's an old stuff, but look, coin toss, right, that's a popular one, especially with our good friend Kelly Kreiner, who loves the coin toss. He lives and dies by the coin toss, by the way. And then you have all this different, you can bet on it heads, tails, you can bet on if the Chiefs or the Eagles win, and also if they're correct or not correct. It's just amazing. MVP, I mean, look at this stuff. MVP winner to be on a losing team. Doesn't happen very often. Quarterback, you can go by position here. I mean, it's just amazing with the Super Bowl specials that they have as well. So, you need to go check out BetUS because, Mo and I keep talking about it. We keep telling you about it all season long. But I will say that, oops, there we go. I didn't show everybody. I got to show them this. But yeah, here's all we talked about the different props, right? So here you go. Make sure you check this out. They have this whole area just for the Super Bowl, this Super Bowl page where you have props, you have alternatives, all kinds of stuff to go on to check out what's going on with BetUS. But Mo, let's do real quick. Who's going to win the game in your view?
Bleacher Report column ran today, Thursday morning, and I had the Eagles winning it.
Wow.
Have the Eagles winning it outright. The reason being If you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, not just saying this because this is a Raider podcast, but you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they've allowed 147 and 149 rushing yards in their 2 playoff games. Saquon Barkley is a man on a mission, and he's averaging about that in the playoffs. So I don't think they'll be able to stop Saquon Barkley in this football game, because the Chiefs, even though they were 8th, I believe, in rushing during the regular season, they're having issues stopping the run. So with Jalen Hurts also running the football with Saquon Barkley, I think the Eagles could rush for 150 plus yards, and it could be a long day for the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, particularly in the second half, because that's where I think the defense will wear down, and Jalen Hurts will pick his spots, throwing to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the Eagles too. It's just so hard for me to put any money against the Chiefs just because of how they win and how they go about things. And then I look at coaching, right? Andy Reid, just nothing against Nick Sirianni, but just a whole different level. But I agree with you. I think if they pound the rock and they use Saquon Barkley like I know they can, that they will wear that Chiefs defense down. I think this could be a close game, and I think the Eagles pull it out in the end. So that's great. But don't miss out on betting it. Go to BetUS, where you can get this special deal. That's right, 150% sign-up bonus. If you haven't done it yet, do it now for Super Bowl, so you get that bonus. That's up to $2,000 on your deposit. Whether you deposit $100 or $2,000, you're getting 150% sign-up bonus. Just use the code YouTube150. That's promo code YouTube150. Start playing today. Get in on the action for the Super Bowl. Welcome back. Segment number 2 here on Silver and Black. Today, we're talking Raiders. We're talking, of course, the new coaching staff, but we're also going to get into this segment a little bit about what kind of players may we see based on Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, and so on, and we'll get to that as well. We are an Odyssey Sports Original podcast covering the Raiders. Please subscribe wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. Also, if you're watching us on video, subscribe where you're watching us, and our video always brought to you by our good friends at BetUS, where you can get the 150% sign-up bonus. Just use the promo code YouTube150. Scott Branson, Mo Moten back with you, and we're talking Raiders players. We talked about quarterback a little bit in the first segment, clearly, most important position on the field, and what the Raiders are going to do there. I saw some people getting back to me on the quarterback situation, and this was the Aiden O'Connell thing we talked about in the first segment, which was, well, Pete Carroll doesn't have to have, he's proven he doesn't have to have a mobile quarterback, so Aiden O'Connell can be the guy. No, you still have to do other things well. And so when you start to think about what we know about Pete Carroll, what we know about Chip Kelly, and we look at the offense overall, starting with the quarterback, Mo, you don't have to be a running quarterback. You don't have to be Lamar Jackson. We talked about functional mobility. There it is again. That's what you need to do. We talked about Will Howard from Ohio State in the first segment as a second-day pick. He is a guy, not a runner. He's a pocket passer, but he does have the functional mobility to run. And he's got some accuracy issues, which he'd have to develop, but he's a very good game manager and decision maker. What do you see there from these two coaches, Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, that if Raider fans are starting to look at the type of quarterback that would succeed in the system as we know it today, who is that guy? What does he do?
So I agree with you when you say doesn't necessarily need a uber athletic quarterback. But for the most part, when you look at Chip Kelly, the quarterbacks he's had, and Pete Carroll, I know he's a defensive-minded head coach, but the quarterbacks he's had, yes, he had Matt Hasselbeck his first year in Seattle, but Matt Hasselbeck had a ton of experience. Aiden O'Connell doesn't have a ton of experience. Matt Hasselbeck was about 35 years old when he started for Pete Carroll Seahawks, by the way. Not a mobile quarterback, pocket passer. After that, they had the late Tavares Jackson. Unfortunately, Tavares Jackson passed away in 2020, but Tavares Jackson was an athletic quarterback. And then, of course, they drafted Russell Wilson in the 3rd round in 2012. And the history goes on from there. You look at Chip Kelly. He had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a dual-threat quarterback at UCLA. I believe he had Ethan Garbers. We're familiar with Chase Garbers. He had Ethan Garbers at UCLA. You talked about Will Howard, who isn't a runner, but he's an athletic quarterback. So there, and you look at Chip Kelly, even in the NFL, before he went back to UCLA, he had Michael Vick. He had Mark Sanchez. He had guys who, again, Blaine Gabbert, Colin Kaepernick. These are guys who aren't necessarily, now Colin Kaepernick more on the running side, but these aren't guys who aren't necessarily uber athletes, but they're functionally mobile, as you said, and they're athletic. And I think it helps when you have an RPO offense. And this is why I think that Justin Fields could be a fit. This is why I think that even still, Jackson Dart, athletic quarterback. Jackson Dart, by the way, and Will Howard are very similar to me as far as their strengths and weaknesses are concerned. I think they both can fit. As I said, Chip Kelly did. I'm going to say this again. Chip Kelly did recruit Jackson Dart before he decided to go to USC. So there are some links there. But for the people out there hanging on to the Aiden O'Connell could be a starter thing, I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying it's impossible, because I've been wrong before.
Sure.
But looking at the history of Chip Kelly's quarterbacks and looking at Pete Carroll and his quarterbacks in Seattle, at best, I think Aiden O'Connell is going to be a backup. And Scott, we've been saying all along that Aiden O'Connell is a backup quarterback in this league. There's nothing wrong with that. There are only 32 starters in this league, by the way, for the most part, primary starters. There's nothing wrong with having or being a quality backup quarterback if that's what Aiden O'Connell is, and which we think he is.
Great career in the NFL. The money you make, the ability for longevity to play a long time. It's great. So we'll see. Now we go to the running back position. This is a position that is going to be of keen interest for the Raiders and for fans, because after they said goodbye to Josh Jacobs, we saw what happened with the running game in Las Vegas. And so now this is a very, very, very deep draft at running back. If you look at some quality guys, you're going to be able to get day 2, even in a day 3. I'm not saying that they're going to be bell cow backs, but you're going to find good running backs in this draft. Even at the top of the draft, you have Ashton Genty, who in my first mock, this was all before all the coaching staff stuff happened, I picked the Raiders actually going for him at 6, which I know is a long shot, but I had him there. I think he's still going to be a top 10 player. But when you look at running backs and you look at Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly, what kind of running backs and what kind of situations, what kind of rotations, what do you see from the past that we can maybe glean a little information from?
I think they're going to go with a bigger running back, Scott. Pete Carroll in Seattle had some. Marshawn Lynch is probably the most known, but he also had Chris Carson. He also had Carlos Hyde in the latter part of his career. You look at Chip Kelly, he had Zach Charbonnet, who's a bigger running back, who, by the way, Seattle drafted with Pete Carroll's staff. And then you look at Ohio State this past season. He had a Thunder and Lightning, Chip Kelly did, had a Thunder and Lightning pairing in his backfield. He had Travion Henderson, who's more of the speed running back who can get you the big plays. And then he had Quinshon Judkins, who I think the Raiders are going to draft as the Thunder, the tackle breaker in the backfield. But Judkins could also catch reliable hands. The reason I say I think Judkins is the pick over Travion Henderson is because Judkins, in my opinion, is more of the workhorse running back. He was the workhorse running back at Ole Miss before he went to Ohio State. Also, I listened to John Spytek in Tampa Bay, and he talked about favoring running backs who can break tackles, running backs who don't go down on first contact, running backs who can run through contact. That sounds more like Quinshon Judkins than it does Travion Henderson, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that, I mean, and I think you can glean from that. The one thing I want to say though is, and you and I have to be careful with this too, but I think we're pretty well aware of it, which is I don't see, because there was a concern when Bevel's name came up that it was going to be Seahawks 2.0, that Pete Carroll was going to basically get the whole band back together, and now he got some of them back together, but he was going to get the band back together and do things the way. But I don't see that at all. I see this is a whole different approach. Not to say that tendencies and likes and those types of things as far as roster construction won't pop up because of what we were just talking about, whether it be quarterback, whether it be running back, whether it be wide receiver. These you can get some information, but I just see Pete Carroll doing things differently, especially with Chip Kelly, because now my guess is Tom Brady and what he sold Pete Carroll on, and then what Pete Carroll and Tom Brady sold Chip Kelly on, this is a different approach. They want a much more active and collaborative, I think, approach here. And so I think you can't get too caught up in what these guys did in their other locations, because this is a very different situation.
Right. So I remember that I thought that, there's a good possibility that Bevel may be hired, right? But
Me
I was
too.
hoping, my Raider Common Sense said Bevel, but I was hoping for Chip Kelly. And I said it on last week's show, and I explained why Chip Kelly would be a great fit. Thank goodness they went with Chip Kelly over Bevel. But I think the fear was oh, he's gonna bring back a bunch of guys that he worked with, and he's gonna try to recreate something that he had 10, 15 years ago, and it's not gonna work because you gotta evolve. Turns out it looks like Pete Carroll is evolving. I remember what Pete Carroll said at the press conference, the introductory press conference that stuck out to me. He said taking a year off helped him see the game differently. You know how it is when you're doing something for so long and then you take a year off and you kind of see it from a high level versus being involved in it, and you kind of change or tweak certain things about your philosophy. And he compared it to taking a year off between the coaching the Patriots and going to USC. And he said this same thing with this time around, where he's watching his son's coach, he's watching the game, and he's thinking, I could do this different. I can do this differently. I could tweak this. And I think we're seeing evidence of that. He didn't just bring back his old coordinators. He brought in Chip Kelly. He kept Patrick Graham. So I think that's important to note that Pete Carroll in Seattle is not necessarily going to be Pete Carroll in Las Vegas as far as schematics are concerned. Now you're going to get the same energetic Pete Carroll, 73-year-old, who looks like he's or seems like he's late 50s and early 60s. You're going to get the same person, but as far as what the Raiders are going to do, and again their system and schematics, it's going to be innovative. And I think it starts with Chip Kelly on the offensive side of the ball. Our friends over there at Tape Don't Lie, Matt Holder and Marcus Johnson, are already doing a good job of showing some of the creativity that's in Chip Kelly's scheme. And I would encourage people to check them out. And you'll be encouraged by that. And that's why I'm excited for the offense, despite what the quarterback room looks like right now.
Yeah, and by the way, you're starting to see a new trend emerge. For a while there, the failed college coaches kind of turned off NFL organizations, right? We saw great examples of those happen. And now it seems as though the NFL is kind of letting go of that. And I mean, of course, Chip Kelly has a pedigree coming back to the NFL because he coached in the NFL with some success. So now you're seeing this change. So I also see people make the assumption that what he did in college isn't going to work in professional football. College athletics, college football, and pro football, yes, there's some things that aren't transferable, but most of the concepts, and to your point about the tape don't lie, guys, if you like watching tape and want to understand it a little more, it's a good place to start, because then you'll understand why these same concepts do work in the NFL. Some don't, right? There's some things you can run in college you're not going to run in the NFL because of the speed, because of the size, and because
Hash
of the
marks.
defensive coordinators, right? It's a different game. But some of these concepts do work and are being used in other places in the NFL. And the creativity, right, which we have not seen any creativity on this Raiders offense for a long time. Was there a little bit under John Gruden? Yeah, here and there, but you kind of knew what you were getting. So this, to me, should be incredibly exciting. Now, they might not have all the talent they need on offense in year one, okay? It's not going to be like they're going to go from I don't think they're going to be the Commanders of last year. I'll put it that way. I don't think they're going to have that kind of quick turnaround. But can this team, with the right moves, we don't know yet, it's hard to say, make a significant step? Absolutely. And I think that Chip Kelly is going to be a big part of that, Mo, as well as this kind of new leadership model the Raiders have.
Right. And one thing about Chip Kelly's offense is and again, people act as if Chip Kelly's only year in the NFL was that failure year in San Francisco. It took the NFL 4 years to figure out Chip Kelly's offenses. I'll read you the rankings, Scott. I
Good.
mean, his offenses in Philly, uh, fourth in scoring, third in scoring, 13th in scoring. Then the bottom fell out in the fourth year in San Francisco. Total yards, second in total yards, fifth in total yards, 12th in total yards. So it wasn't like Chip Kelly's offense was an abject failure as soon as he got to the league. Again, he led the Eagles to back-to-back 10-win seasons. I'm telling you, as I'm reading the rankings, his offenses were top 5 for the first 2 years, was kind of in middling, top 12, top 13 his third year. The NFL, it took 4 years for the NFL to figure him out. And now he's evolved after being a head coach at UCLA, an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. He's coming with a refreshed philosophy, understanding that everything he ran in college is not going to run in the NFL. But being the offensive designer that he is, I'd expect this offense to score some points regardless of who the QB is.
Yeah. And you look at the situation, too, when he was in Philadelphia with those offenses. Remember, 2013, he had Michael Vick. We talked about that. Also had Nick Foles and Matt Barkley, who was a rookie there,
Had
but
Sam Bradford.
they won the NFC East title that year. 14. Foles kept the starting job. We kind of know what Foles was, and Sanchez was there a little bit. And then, to me, the one big personnel mistake that he made was he traded Foles for Sam Bradford, right? We all know about Sam Bradford. But you look at those offenses, Mo, with the quarterbacks he had,
Right.
and again, Aiden O'Connell fanboys don't get too excited. But you see what he was able to do with that offense. It shows you the creativity and that he can score points and develop an offense that moves the ball effectively, even if they have some deficiencies, even at the quarterback position.
Right. So you read those names out. Michael Vick, this wasn't the Michael Vick from his Atlanta years, right?
No.
Mark Sanchez, his best years were with the Jets. Nick Foles, who was Nick Foles at that time? This is before Nick Foles won that Super Bowl with Philly. Sam Bradford had bounced around the league. So he had these top scoring offenses and top offenses in total yards without a star quarterback at his peak. So and I know you're saying for the Aiden O'Connell people to pump the brakes a bit, but this shows you that he doesn't need the number one overall pick in the draft
No.
or the best quarterback in free agency to field a pretty good offense. We have already seen it in Philadelphia and at UCLA. He had Dorian Thompson Robinson. What is Dorian Thompson Robinson now? In Cleveland. I know he's a backup, but when he had a chance to step in for Deshaun Watson, he got benched. So
Absolutely.
it goes to my point. And Will Howard a top pick in this draft? No, he's projected to go in round 3. So again, this goes back to my point. Chip Kelly doesn't necessarily need the most elite quarterback to fill the top 10 offense. I'm not saying he will fill the top 10 offense. We'll see what the Raiders come up with at the position, but I do expect them to get a quarterback who can function in his offense and possibly get the Raiders. If you can get them into the top 12 this upcoming season, so be it with that defense.
Absolutely. And I think that's why my belief is the Raiders, with the number 6 pick, if they don't trade down, to me, it screams trenches. It screams defensive line. It screams maybe offensive line, depending where they go, if they go down, but also defensive back, right? Strengthen that defense, strengthen some of the core there. And again, it can change, just like last year with Brock Bowers. Somebody's sitting there that you never thought would be there and they're high on your list. They might go a different direction, but I would not be opposed to that. And I think that despite the fact that they have to figure out quarterback, to your point, they don't have to figure it out in the first round, especially this year. They can do something else. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Really quick.
Yeah.
Let's remember when Pete Carroll's in Seattle drafted my guy Devin Witherspoon, who I was pining for out of Illinois. Keep your eye on Will Johnson. The Raiders have, I believe, 3 to 5 defensive backs who are who have expiring contracts. So both their safeties, Nate Hobbs expiring contract. I think Jack Jones is going to be gone. So they have 4 guys who are going to be expiring contracts. Will Johnson out of Michigan seems like a fit with Patrick Graham running a lot of cover 3 last year.
Absolutely a stud. And so, yeah, I could see them going that way very easily. Okay, we're going to take our final break, everybody. When we come back, we get to you. That's right. We're getting to the Raider Nation mailbag. We got a slew of calls we're going to get to. If you want to call in for next show, my suggestion to you would be to wait till Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, because we record on Thursday mornings this now in our off-season schedule. 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869. It's Mo, it's Scott. We're coming back right after this. Welcome back. It is the home stretch here on Silver and Black today. Hope you're having a great week, everybody. If you're a Raiders fan, you're a card-carrying resident of Raider Nation, you got to be having a good week, right? This team has been making all the right moves so far in the offseason, coaching staff, GM, all of that. And so we appreciate you guys being with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Also, if you're watching us on video, subscribe and hit the notifications bell there. And a big thanks to BetUS, who sponsors our video. Don't forget, YouTube 150 is the code to get 150% sign-up bonus up to $2,000. Don't forget, you can get in on the action for the Super Bowl this weekend right now. So get to BetUS. Scott Branson, Mo Moten back with you. All right, Mo, we're going to get in and see what people have to say. What's the reaction? Overwhelmingly, again, I've seen positive reaction. Those that are still negative or don't like some of the hires so far, I just ask why, and a lot of the reason I'm getting is much more emotional than it is factual. So I'm going to give those folks time. I'm not criticizing them. I'm going to give them some time to ruminate on what is going on and look into and educate themselves on the coaching staff, especially Chip Kelly, what he's been able to do. So there you go. But we're going to start out, and we tried to come up with a nickname, and Michelle, you have to tell us it's Michelle the Bell. I'm calling her the Bell. Like, you know, Michelle My Bell, which is the Beatles song, but we're going to call her Michelle the Bell from East Bay is first up. She's a popular caller here. Even she calls in every once in a while, but we're going to go to her first. Here she is.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Mo. It's Michelle in the East Bay. I'm calling back. I just wanted to thank you for your really nice comments on the call a couple weeks ago, and also just thank you to another caller that called in last week who gave me a shout out too. It's, you know, I appreciate the support for the female voice.
Yeah.
But anyways, I am just calling to say how excited I am at how the staff is filling out. It feels like the most aggressive and serious we've been at assembling a really good coaching staff in a really long time. And I know, and I'm sure that the new ownership group has a lot to do with it. So I'm very thankful. I made a comment in Mo's Bleacher Report Live yesterday to this effect, but I'm also just really encouraged by the staff in the sense that Pete Carroll isn't doing, you know, a copy paste of his staff in Seattle and trying to run it back. It shows that he has, you know, adaptability and willingness to do things a little bit differently, which I think is going to be really important. And I think it's probably some of the criticism or hesitation that people had about bringing him on. So that's all really good there. I did have a question for you all. With the free agents that are on the market and all the rumors that are swirling around, I'm interested to hear who you think the Raiders might be most interested in pursuing as far as free agents go, because I know there's a lot of different ways that the draft could shake out. So considering who we're targeting in the draft and may or may not get, who do you think is the most likely free agent that we would bring on? Can't wait to hear what you think. Thanks so much.
All right, there you go. Michelle in East Bay, thanks for the call. Mo, I'll let you take this one first. I mean, again, she's got very positive attitude about this, loves what's happening. And her question, though, is a good one, which is, you know, free agency begins March 12th. That's when of course, you have the legal tampering period right before that, and then you get into that. Mo, there's some big names out there, some at positions of need for the Raiders. When you look at that list of free agents out there, who pops out for you as maybe a target for the Raiders and what their needs are?
So my apologies, Michelle. It took me a while to figure out. Michelle is also MP3 at my Bleacher Report Live, so it took me a while to figure that out. But I think I figured it out last week. But shout out to MP3/Michelle and the caller. But the free agents that I had that popped in, first and foremost, Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
I know the Raiders have Jacoby Myers there. Wide receiver isn't a dire need because Brock Bowers is their top pass catcher. But Chris Godwin coming over from Tampa Bay following John Spytek, I think makes a lot of sense. Chris Godwin is not yet 30. He's coming off of an injury-riddled year. Now, I believe, serious injury in the middle of the year, so it wasn't like a bunch of injuries, but still young, still at his prime, and you're probably going to get him at a discount because of the injury that he had. I believe it was a broken ankle or dislocated ankle, if you remember that Kansas City Chiefs game on Monday Night Football. But I think he's the first name. His name comes up first at the wide receiver position. The other name that came up for me, and it came out recently, Charvarius Ward. Charvarius Ward had an interesting post this week. He said, whatever team signs me is going to get the best version of me. And he, you know, you may not have to pay him top dollar, little older quarterback, experienced quarterback, but I think he could be a fit. Again, if Patrick Graham runs that cover 3 scheme, I think Charvarius Ward could be a fit. The dream free agent that I have in mind is Trey Smith. I know he's a Kansas City Chief right now.
Yes.
But if you're looking at upgrading the interior of the Raiders offensive line, you already got Dylan Parham and Jackson Powers Johnson. I think Andre James is going to be out of there. But Trey Smith could be someone that the Raiders are interested in. Now, I know Chip Kelly runs a lot of inside zone runs. We'll see. but Trey Smith is probably arguably going to be the best guard available on the market. If you're looking at making a big splash and you're saying who's the dream target, I think Trey Smith is that guy.
Yeah, I also like Cam Robinson, right? He was traded to the Vikings. He's going to be free. He's a tackle, but you start to look at it, offensive line. He's 29 years old. He's got a lot left in the tank, and I keep going back to that idea, and I like the names you brought up, Ward being one of them, the idea of strengthening that offensive line wherever you can and creating depth. Now, the Vikings may have the inside track there. They had a good season. He might be excited to stay there, but he's a guy I would definitely look at as well because I think the Raiders are going to have to do everything they can to strengthen that offensive line. And if Sam Darnold doesn't get signed by the Vikings, and the Raiders were in on that too, obviously he's well-versed with Cam Robinson up on the line. So good stuff. We'll see how it all works out. We got a lot of time to talk about. We're going to get into that over the next few weeks. All right, now we're going out to our good buddy. We're staying in the Bay Area. It's Anders out in Oakland.
Hello, fellas. This is Anders calling from Oakland. It's been a little while, but it's good to connect with you guys again. I remember back in 2014, John Madden, I guess, told Mark Davis that he needed to hire an adult as head coach. And so we got Del Rio, and he was really good for a bit and kind of what the team needed after about a decade or so of an absolute complete clown show. And now it kind of feels to me like the Carroll, Graham, Kelly, that's kind of about as adult as you're going to get. And I think, importantly, that these coordinators are obviously going to be totally fine working for Carroll, which is what they will be doing. And I can only imagine how Graham felt about Pierce being his boss. Like, after one boneheaded in-game decision after another, he would be like, am I really, like, that guy? That's my boss? And I think when people start questioning their bosses, this ship is going to start sinking pretty quickly. There's your little business strategy lesson. I think this trio is going to be also a really good complement to a first-time GM. They're all super seasoned, and I think that's a smart move. So we kind of need to stabilize it, and we will across the board. I think that'll help. On top of that, of course, Kelly will probably call kind of an exciting game, which I'm looking forward to. Finally, then, I think on this GM front, Telesco was fine, but was he excellent? He had kind of a long history of conservative drafts, rarely trading up or down. He kind of went with safe bets, and that's fine and all, but we needed an upgrade. B or a B plus is not really going to cut it in our division, and I think we got an ace GM, but we'll see. And my guess is that some of these coaches were probably saying, you know what, we know what we're going to get in Telesco, and we're not terribly excited about it. So now there's a little bit more upside. And finally, in the last episode, I think you guys talked about you can't always get what you want, the Stones song. And Jagger is 81 years old. He's 8 years older than Carroll, and there is not a single band in the world that wouldn't want him as their front man. So this whole age thing, I think, is really exaggerated. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Anders. As the old guy on the show, yes, I agree with you, by the way. But he brings up so many good points, and I think that this idea of adults in the room, absolutely, and it's finally and again, we have to see it all plays out. It's early, but it appears that Mark Davis, after all these years, has listened and finally had somebody there that could guide him, that he trusted implicitly enough with the football piece of this to let go, because Tom Brady is that guy. I still get people, Tom Brady's, I'm like, you don't root against Tom Brady now because he's your team. He's your owner. He's part owner. He's running the football side of things. The one thing we didn't mention at the top of the show when we were talking about the additions to the staff was Mark Hughes, who was hired as the senior vice president of football operations, hired him away from the Broncos, somebody who Tom Brady knows very well. And that was a huge hire, by the way. This shows that the Raider organization is doing things differently. They're bringing in very seasoned, smart, respected football people, Mo, and that is refreshing. It's not emotional decision-making and hiring.
And talking about the front office, touching on Andres' comment about Tom Telesco, I think it's important to note that because a lot of people were some people were bummed that they let go of Tom Telesco. And Adam Schefter came out and said that Tom Telesco wasn't an appealing general manager for some of these head coaches who were looking for jobs. And I think I'm not saying that had the Raiders kept Tom Telesco that Pete Carroll would still sign on. We have no clue if that's true or not. But I think when you look at the Raiders situation, you mentioned it. They have to be aggressive. If you look across the league, aggressive wins in this league. I remember the Rams making the trade for Matthew Stafford. They immediately won a Super Bowl. The Ravens are constantly making moves with players. I know they haven't won a Super Bowl in quite a while, but they're a perennial playoff contender. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers took a chance with Baker Mayfield. They're perennial playoff contenders, winning 4 consecutive division titles now. You got to roll the dice sometime. In my area, rolling the dice is not necessarily a good thing. It can get you locked up. But see, in the NFL, you have to roll the dice. You have to take some risks. You got to take some big swings. And Tom Telesco, as Andres mentioned, is not a GM that is known for taking big swings. And I think John Spytek mentioned it. I encourage a lot of people to just type in John Spytek in YouTube, and you'll see that their draft philosophy in Tampa Bay was to make moves. I believe they went 8 years in a row where they made a trade in the draft. Yep. And then when they didn't make a trade in the draft, the reporters were like, hey, what's going on? Why didn't you guys make a move? He comes from an aggressive organization. And I think that's what the Raiders need right now.
Yes, great call, Honors. Appreciate it. Now we're going out to Bill in Virginia. Here's Bill.
Hey, Scott and Mo. It's Bill from 757 in Southern Virginia. Hey, first of all, it's about 4:30 in the afternoon here where I am at Tuesday afternoon. I just want to address the whole Myles Garrett hype that's been going around, and we should trade for him. And people are seriously talking about this. First of all, he wants $35 million a year. Okay, that is more than a third of our cap space, and that is too much. That's way too much. We cannot afford that. We already got a good edge rusher, Knox Crosby and everything. We got to pay max, first of all. We got to get at least 5 of those guys that are up for free agency, at least 5 of them, okay? These guys are superstars, and they need to be re-signed, at least 5 of them, all right? And that's going to take up a lot of cap space right there. And then we got the draft and everything like that. And possibly, maybe go for a veteran quarterback. Let's talk about quarterback. Now, Kirk Cousins or something would be way too expensive, so we got to bypass him. I can't believe some of the money that these people want. So we can't. Okay, that's just too much. That's I don't know, what is it, like $40 million a year or something like that? That's crazy. I don't know if he still has that standpoint, but I was thinking that we can probably draft somebody in the 3rd round, maybe Jackson Dart, maybe Gabriel, right? And get a veteran, such as what Justin Fields. Okay, someone like that. Okay, it won't cost too much, and he can really be worked with. It'll be better than what we have now. And Ed O'Connell, I don't suppose he's going to get cut. It'll only be like $1 million or something like that for us if we cut him. Gardner Minshew would give about $6 million at him. I'm sure they'll cut him this season. I think Aiden should stay around for one more season at least. He'll be a good 3rd stringer, 2nd stringer maybe. You know, he's a good quarterback, and we should keep him around for another year. And when we cut him loose, probably in 26, I'm sure he'll go somewhere and he'll do a lot better. He'll excel, and he'll have good coaching and things like that. And maybe he I don't think his career in the NFL is over at all. Anyway, yeah, the Myles Garrett thing, though, that's my main topic. That's a definite no as far as I'm concerned. That's way too much money. We don't need to fill that space. We got to concentrate on our O-line and other positions like that. Besides that, I'm very happy about what's going on with the coaching and the new hires and everything like that. Very, very ecstatic about it. I don't suppose that Spytek and everybody is going to make a move like that. That's a lot of money. Anyway, have a good one. Bye.
All right, there you go. Bill out in Virginia, and I agree with him. Mo, go ahead.
I went over this in my Bleacher Report live on Wednesday, and I was railing on this, and I couldn't believe it was an actual topic. Like, what are we even talking about? Like, as he said, Myles Garrett, he was projected of trying to get 35 million. Then you have to pay Max Crosby. And, oh, by the way, to get Myles Garrett, you also have to give up multiple first-round picks. Yeah. Why are you doing this without a quarterback? There are people out there who would not trade up for a quarterback. I get the understanding that these quarterbacks in this class aren't worth it. I disagree. I think Cam Ward would be worth it. But there are people out there who wouldn't trade up for a quarterback, but they'll trade multiple ones for Myles Garrett, and you got to pay him while in the same offseason as paying Max Crosby. By the way, the Raiders have needs. As I said, they have 4 defensive backs who are going to be free agents. With Chip Kelly's scheme coming in, you might have to add an offensive lineman. I want Trey Smith. They have to get their, at least one running back, a wide receiver. The Raiders have too many needs to be spending on Myles Garrett and Max Crosby. And by the way, again, having to give up multiple first-round picks for Myles Garrett. I couldn't believe this was an actual discussion within the fan base.
And that's because people fall in love with names, right? And I get it. And to your point, this is you said exactly what I was going to say, which is if the Raiders had a big weakness at the other defensive end and everything else was falling into place, they're a playoff team,
Right.
They just need to get pushed over the hump. Okay, I get it. Because you have your window, right? In the NFL, you talk about the window, the Bills know all about it.
Right.
You have a window when you got to win. So could I see the Bills making that trade and paying them that kind of money? Absolutely. Because they got everything else pretty much wound up. They got some other issues. But needless to say, the Bills are there. The Raiders are not. It makes zero sense. You have to, and if you listen to what John Spytek said, along with Pete Carroll, you got to build this team through the draft, and you use free agency to pepper it in. That's the way you do it. That's how they've been successful in other spots. You look at Tampa Bay. You look at what Seattle did with Pete Carroll. It's right there. So don't fall in love with names because he's a great player. It just makes no sense for the Raiders. I agree 100%.
And Scott, by the way, he was on Sports Illustrated, and they asked him what team does he see himself playing for. He said the Washington Commanders. Why? The Washington Commanders were in the playoffs, went to the NFC Championship game. They got their quarterback. He's talked about winning over and over again. He wants to go to a playoff team. I think the Raiders will be improved, but are they a playoff team? Let's hold off on that one. That's where he wants to go.
Yeah, and not that there aren't some people out there like this. But I find more and more when I talk to some people in Raider Nation, they believe these guys are always motivated just by money. And it's not. It's certainly an important piece of it. You're being compensated for your talent and what you do for a living.
They want to win.
But that's not it. To your point about Myles Garrett, he wants to win. Okay, thanks for the call, Bill. Now we're going out to Raider Rob in San Diego. Here we go.
What's up, Scott and Mo? Raider Rob, calling you guys from San Diego. So, man, I'm loving what I'm seeing with this coaching staff. Chip Kelly retaining Patrick Graham. So I got a question for you guys. What do you think we do about QB? I think I'm feeling that the Raiders are going to move up for Shedeur Sanders from the Chip Kelly hire. Or do you guys think maybe we get a Justin Fields and we go up? Want to hear what you guys have to think about that. Also, I'm curious we have so many defensive guys that are great that are going to be free agents. Who do we sign? Who do we let go? I say we re-sign Spillane, Palomal, and Morrig, and Hobbs, and Kuntz. Those are my go-to guys. I would like to hear what you guys got to say. Appreciate what you guys do. Raider Rob is out of here.
All right.
Bye.
Raider Rob in San Diego, thanks for the call, man. And you know what, Mo, I could see, and we talked about it earlier, I could see the quarterback room being completely new. I mean, I like Aiden O'Connell. I think he can be a good backup quarterback in the NFL. I'm not saying that he's not, but I could, depending on how the coaching staff and how Chip Kelly looks at that room, walking away from him wouldn't kill them either. So we'll see, but I definitely agree with you, and we talked about it earlier, Rob, about getting a veteran and then bringing in a rookie and letting them compete. So we'll see how that all goes. Now, as far as the free agents go and the priority of those free agents on defense mode, do you agree with his list of priority free agents?
I don't think they all come back. I think that I'll put Malcolm Kuntz and Nate Hobbs at the top of the list. It's hard to find a quality slot cornerback in this league, and you need to match up with 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers now with these passing attacks. I think Nate Hobbs is an important piece. Malcolm Kuntz, before he hurt his knee, we felt like he could have had his full breakout year. He broke out in the second half of 2023. I think you bring him back because he's going to be probably at a discounted price, being that he didn't play this year. So I think those two guys are the first two. Then you can make the case for Robert Spillane unless you find his successor at linebacker. I don't think Divine Diablo is back, though Rob didn't mention Divine Diablo. I do want to touch on the quarterback room. I do agree with our previous caller, Bill. I like the idea of a Justin Fields and a Jackson Dart or Will Howard combination. And again, I know people are gonna hate the Justin Fields idea because they have this. Remember, he was in Chicago, wasn't good. Remember, he had Luke Getsy in Chicago, people. Luke Getsy was his offensive coordinator in Chicago. The same Luke Getsy who got fired halfway through the year with the Raiders. As I said, with a small sample size under Arthur Smith, who's a pretty good offensive coordinator, he showed improvement. He completed 65.8% of his passes for the people who say he's wildly inaccurate. There was some improvement there. And by the way, the Pittsburgh Steelers had one wide receiver in George Pickens. I know they have Pat Fryermuth, but the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive supporting cast wasn't all of that great. And Justin Fields still showed improvement under Arthur Smith. Can you imagine him and Chip Kelly's offense with RPO designs? Again, as I said, veteran quarterback with a rookie, Jackson Dart or Will Howard. Those are my two guys out of the draft that I would take on day 2 behind Justin Fields. As far as Aiden O'Connell is concerned, I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying the Raiders are going to cut Aiden O'Connell. I'm saying his years as a potential starter are over. I think he could be a backup, but I also think the Titans may be interested in Aiden O'Connell. I know they have the number 1 overall pick. They could draft Cam Ward. But let's remember, they just hired Dave Ziegler as, I believe, an assistant general manager. Dave Ziegler was the GM when the Raiders drafted Aiden O'Connell. I could see the Titans acquiring Aiden O'Connell and he being the backup in Tennessee if the Raiders want to turn over their entire quarterback room.
Yeah, good points. We'll see how things end up, but thanks for the call. We appreciate it. All right, now we're going out to the LBC, baby. Here we go.
Hey, Scott and Mo, this is Tack in Long Beach. Dare I say there's a lot of reason for optimism right now. I'm feeling really good after that Pete Carroll press conference and Pete Carroll hire. I feel like for the first time in a long time, there are professional management structures in place for the Raiders with the GM, head coach of Pete Carroll, a real professional offensive coordinator in Chip Kelly, a real professional defensive coordinator in Patrick Graham. He's been with these players for several years now, and he gets to stay with them, and there's some continuity there, not bringing in a new defensive scheme. I want to know what you guys think about the presence of Chip Kelly, bringing in an exciting offense, and whether that can attract a free agent quarterback in either Sam Darnold or Justin Fields. I feel like for the first time in a while, I'm getting the sense that this team, this management team, top down from Spytek down to Chip Kelly, has a real plan for getting a long-term quarterback with the Raiders. Now, I'm not opposed to drafting a quarterback as well, but what I really liked was something Pete Carroll said at the press conference, which is quarterback's a hard position to play, so let's build up around the quarterback and make his job easier. Build the O-line, get some playmakers at wide receiver, build a real solid defense so the whole game doesn't rely on the quarterback's arm. So I think we can build up the team in free agency and quarterback, if not the first round, maybe in the second round, maybe a Jackson Dart or Will Howard, I don't know, Jalen Milroe. So anyway, I'm real optimistic, guys, but we've been disappointed before rooting for the Raiders at this time of the year. Thanks.
Good shout, Tack. Good call there. I appreciate it. Mo, that's something big here because the Raiders organization, this is something you and I talked about last year with Antonio Pierce too, not only with him trying to get a coaching staff, but also with players. While everybody would say, yeah, he's one of us, he played for us, it's different. Now, if you're a free agent player, you have a dynamic offensive coordinator, you have a head coach who's a proven winner, who's won the ring and the Lombardi Trophy. For a player considering offers from teams, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's absolutely a big deal. I think this is something that a lot of people don't talk about is players are also attracted to who's coaching with this specific team. So maybe they've had a rapport with that coach before, or they feel like that coach can elevate them as a player. They'll go to a team where, okay, not making as much money, but my career could be on a positive trajectory. I talked about the other factor here, other than Chip Kelly with the quarterbacks, is Tom Brady is still a factor here. Over at The Athletic, Alec Lewis wrote that Sam Darnold would be interested in going to the Raiders simply because of learning from Tom Brady and being part of what's going on in Las Vegas. So the Tom Brady draw still applies. I think a lot of people felt like it only applied to the coaching search. it applies to quarterbacks in this league. I think there are a lot of young quarterbacks who would love to rub shoulders with Tom Brady and potentially link up with Chip Kelly as a play call designer, and then have that overarching eye of Tom Brady to say, hey, this is what I did as a player. This is what you could do to improve this or that with technique, conditioning. I think all of that matters, and you're going to get some quarterbacks who are going to be not lining up necessarily to play for the Raiders, but they're going to have multiple people interested in coming to Las Vegas other than what can they pay me.
All right, now we're going out to Tarek in Chicago.
What is up, Scott and Mo? This is Tarek hollering at you guys from the Windy City. Little update on the Raiders as they continue to finalize the coaching staff. I have more and more confidence that the eventual successor to Pete Carroll is going to be on the roster, on the coaching staff. I wonder if we shouldn't assume it's going to be Patrick Graham or Chip Kelly, but make no question about it, the successor is going to be on the coaching staff. It is. I don't recognize the way the Raiders are doing things anymore, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing for all Raider fans. You're seeing some competent leadership, and there's clearly a plan in place at each phase as we head into this offseason. And I think with Raider free agents, I think there's a lot of tough decisions to make. I'd like to see guys like Chason, Paul Mary come back. We'll see what happens with guys like Hobbs and Spillane, but it'll be interesting to see what they do with regards to identifying which Raiders they want to bring back. Another intriguing thing, I mean, the new league year, free agency starts March 12th, so a lot of question marks, but it is a given that the Raiders are going to bring in a free agent quarterback, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, just to name a few. I mean, all those come to mind. And when it comes to the draft, a lot of questions there. Are the Raiders necessarily going to be aggressive and move up in the top 1 or 2? Are they going to stay put at number 6? If the Raiders get the free agent quarterback that they covet, who would be a very solid bridge, are they definitely going to get a quarterback in the first round? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, so there's all sorts of questions. It's certainly an intriguing offseason to say the least, but again, knowing that Mark Davis is no longer calling the shots, I think I've never been as confident as I am now in just the people who are making these decisions, and having a coach who knows what he's doing and who's been there before, to team him along with Spytek. I think it's gonna bear some fruit. Definitely want to know what your thoughts are on free agent quarterbacks, who you think the Raiders bring back in free agency, and obviously as we get closer and closer to the draft, there will be definitely more discussions about that. You guys have a fantastic week, and I will talk to you guys later. Go Raiders. Bye-bye.
All right, there's Tarek. And Tarek, we're fortunate. We already answered a lot of your question there, which is great. But I want to focus in, Mo, and get your thoughts. I don't understand. Now, I understand Raider fans are used to dysfunction and the lack of stability. So they're looking for stability. But the fascination with the heir apparent to Pete Carroll being, like, I don't understand. He just got to, he hasn't even coached a game yet. How about Pete Carroll put 3 years together, and the Raiders are ultra competitive, and then you worry about the next coach when he's starting to think about retiring?
I think it's an important discussion simply because, as Tarek said, I believe the successor is probably on the staff, and you want to know what the plan is. Because if you let's say the Raiders do build something, positive, and they start winning games and being playoff contenders, you want to be able to sustain that, right? You don't want a flash in the pan season where, okay, Pete Carroll got things on the ground and now he's stepping down, so then what? I think Raider fans want to know that the plan will be sustainable. And I think that's a fair concern, because I talked about the successor situation on my Bleacher Report Live. I do think it's going to be, if you're asking me today, I think it's going to be Patrick Graham, because Patrick Graham has survived now 3 coaching staffs, well, 2. So remember, he came on with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels gets fired. Antonio Pierce gets promoted. He's still the defensive coordinator. Antonio Pierce gets fired. They bring in Pete Carroll. He's still around. You don't see that in the NFL. You usually see turnover after the first firing. This is now his 3rd coaching staff. So what that tells me is he has a lot of respect in that locker room. Chip Kelly made a comment Wednesday that stood out to me. He said he doesn't necessarily have to be a head coach again. He said he's fine. He's just fine coaching. Remember, he went from being UCLA's head coach to Ohio State's offensive coordinator. So that tells you that he's not necessarily looking for a head coaching job. and he just got there. And I think Patrick Graham has the lead in that successor race, if you want to call it that, because of the respect that he already has in the locker room. Really quick, Scott, I also want to say this, right? Because there's a lot of positivity coming in here, and I'm with a lot of the callers on this one, right? But I want to say this. Just because we understand that the Raiders are doing business differently and it looks good now, doesn't mean everything is going to work. And I say this because if you go on social media, which could be a mistake sometime, if everything doesn't go right and everything is 100%, oh, the Raiders made a mistake. Oh, you were all pumping up Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham and Chip Kelly. Oh, this didn't work. That didn't work. Everything is not going to work out. But if for the most part the Raiders are heading in the right direction, that's what we're looking for. They're not going to fix everything in one off season. We're just looking at the overall plan and saying it's heading in the right direction. So don't panic if that one free agent is a bust or that one draft pick in the second round doesn't work out. Look at the big picture.
Absolutely. Well said. All right. We only got a few minutes left, but I want to get these calls in. It's Yan Dog. Call him back in. Here he is.
Hey, Scott, Mo, Yan Dog. I love the administration that we have running the team. Pete Carroll, head coach, Potato Chip Kelly, Greg Olson, GM Spytek. God bless Brady. It's all his moves. If it wasn't for Brady, I'll tell you, we would be lost with Herman Munster, Davis. Let's go out and get Nick Bolton from the Chiefs available. We got the cap, we got the money, man, and he's been killing us as a Chief. And we could sign him. That would be great. He's an awesome player, and we could definitely use him. Let's sign Nick Chubb. He's a free agent. Let's bring in along Tyreek Hill as a receiver. Build up our offensive line, and we're looking good. We're looking good, and I'm really happy about this. And I hope they keep going on because we got the money. We're second in the league with the cap space here, so we got a lot of money. So, but that's really about it. I just really like the direction that they're taking, and let's just keep up the good work, and let's hope 2025 is going to be a good year. But I have to say, Scott, Mo, I love what they're doing. Okay, guys, that's about it. Over and out.
All right.
Yan Dog.
With the bark. We appreciate that. Mo, it brings up a good point, though, as well, which is, yes, the Raiders, second most cap space. We keep hearing it. But I'll advise you to sometimes when guys go in the Navy and they go overseas for the first time, they have their first liberty in the Philippines, and they spend all their money in one night. The drunken sailor analogy. The Raiders have a lot of money, but as you mentioned earlier, got to take care of Max Crosby. Got free agents you got to sign. You got other guys that you're going to bring on, absolutely, not to mention draft picks. So when you look at that money, it can go quickly, which is why I think what you said to the previous caller is absolutely true, which is they're not going to fix everything in 1 year. They have to be wise and prudent with this spend and with the money to be able to build this roster. To me, what Pete Carroll needs to do and what John Spytek will do is, yes, they'll go get some free agents, but they know that the Raiders' problem over the last 10 years and longer, but I'm just going to focus on the last 10 years, has been the inability to draft consistent players who stay, start, and at least get through their rookie contract and contribute in a way that helps the team get better.
You can be aggressive in free agency and not necessarily throw your money all over the place. I think people associate being aggressive with spending big money on, 2 to 3 free agents. You can be aggressive and make trades. There are going to be guys on the market who are going to be at a discounted rate. I talked about bringing back Malcolm Kuntz on a discounted rate because he's coming off of injury. Same applies to Chris Godwin coming over for Tampa Bay. If you're a person who's into Justin Fields, his market value is, I believe, $6.4 million. I would take a chance on Justin Fields if his market value is $6.4 million. I'm just saying. So they're going to be quarterbacks and guards and positions of need that are going to be available on the market at a modest rate. You don't necessarily have to get the biggest name at every position.
Absolutely. And by the way, some of the free agents, we talked about running backs earlier. Aaron Jones, you talk about the bigger backs, right? Aaron Jones is out there. He mentioned Chubb. You also have J.K. Dobbins. Unfortunately, who's gotten a lot of.
I'd give Rico Dowdle a look, actually, if they're going to bring in
Rico
a veteran.
Dowdle, absolutely. He had a good season. So there's some guys out there that kind of fit the mold we think Pete Carroll will be into as far as the bigger backs go. So we'll see. Great call, Yanda. All right, we got to get out of here. So we're going to close the show. We're going to go behind bars with Pastor Mike.
Scott, Mo, it's Pastor Mike behind bars. Hope you guys are doing okay. Yeah, Chip Kelly, I think is a great hire. I like what's happening. It looks like the Raiders are developing and building a solid coaching staff, and I think that's really important. The Raiders for many years have just been completely outcoached, just about, especially in the division. There's no doubt about it. But the one thing you can say right now is that they definitely are doing something right. I think Tom Brady, the other minority owners that have come in, infused with some cash, paying Chip, a bag. Hey, good. I'm pretty excited. As far as quarterback, I'm not sure. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, right? None of us know. We don't know what they're thinking. But I'm thinking, hey, he's a little injury prone, but Marcus Mariota coming back might not be a bad idea. Maybe trading for Justin Fields, I think might be a good idea. Kyler Murray, I've heard that rumor as well. I mean, who knows? But yeah, but no, please no Russell Wilson. We don't need Russ here. I don't think that would be a good idea. But in any event, hey, I'm pretty excited. I know that I guess there's a game this Sunday. I'm not sure if I'm watching. Probably will watch because I'm a glutton for punishment. But in any event, I'm pretty excited about this off season. Can't wait to see what happens. And it's good talking to you guys, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Raiders.
There we go. Pastor Mike behind bars, always with a great call. We appreciate that. Good points all. We'll see what they do with quarterback. It's going to be obviously one of the big questions coming up in this offseason. So thanks for the call again. Mo, I know we already gave earlier, if you missed it during the Bet US break at the beginning of the show, Mo and I have both picked the Eagles in Sunday's game in the Super Bowl. That's not wishful thinking or pandering to Raider fans because you hate the Chiefs so much. It is the belief that the run game and the defense will be able to withhold the Chiefs and put enough pressure on them. So it's going to be exciting to watch that and see what happens with the Super Bowl. Mo, let everybody know what you got here. We're sitting here on Thursday. What you got coming this weekend as far as the Super Bowl coverage goes. If they want to follow you there, and let them know what you're up to so they can keep track of Midtown Mo.
As you all know, teaming up with our guys over at Bet US, I'm going to have some prop bets. And you heard about a couple of bets that I already have on this show. Philadelphia Eagles winning, obviously covering +1.5. But again, I'm going to have some prop bets up over the next couple of days to look out for those. I'm on a heater. I think I've hit maybe 6 or 7 straight. So if you want to make some extra money, hop on the bandwagon now while it's hot.
There you go. Make sure you also follow Mo on X at Mo Moton, MOEMOTON. I am at LV Gully. And don't forget, we have the new Silver and Black Today community on X. So if you're on X, go over there, look for the community tab, and then you can join our community and talk directly with us in that kind of contained environment, which will be fun, which I'm sure as we move into free agency and the draft, we're going to have a lot of fun in there. So make sure you do that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your audio. Look for Silver and Black Today, and then also rate and review. We've had a massive year too, Mo, on, obviously Apple drives the podcast world the most. So most of our listeners come there, but we've had massive growth on Spotify, which is good. And we also put up the video on Spotify because you can have video podcasts on Spotify. So the video you're watching, which again, brought to you by our good friends at BetUS, you can watch it in Spotify as well. So, no wonder people are there. They just come to see Mo and to see if he's got his fade all good and ready to roll, but anyway, thank you guys for doing that. We certainly appreciate it. And we will be back with you next week hopefully celebrating our winning pick with the Eagles. And again, check out Mo's larger slate of picks and my commentary during the game, which will probably be after a few bourbons. So it'll be fun. But we appreciate you guys being with us. Mo, my friend, have a great Super Bowl weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right, to all of you out there, thank you for watching. Thanks for calling in and being part of the show. For our producer, Mike Rabier and Mo Moten, I'm Scott Branson. This has been Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time. All right, just in time for my meeting.